What's that supposed to mean?
Starting to get annoyed by her overbearing attitude, Kouji is about to demand answers, when she cuts him off with a gesture and shines her light at the corner of the well.
You didn't notice this, Tono-kun?
Huh?
In the light of the lamp, Kouji sees that some of the stones are clearly different than the rest of the wall. This must be what Ryouko was looking for while ignoring him.
Huh? No. There wasn't enough light to see.
Ryoko's gaze moves slowly along the wall, finally coming to rest on a gap between two of the stones. The hole is just wide enough for an adult to reach into open-handed.
You sure picked the right well to fall down.
Ryouko says with a grim smile.
Like they say, expect the unexpected.
She wastes no time in thrusting her hand into the opening. After she feels around for a few seconds, Kouji hears the thunk of something solid coming together behind the wall.
Doctor?
Ryouko pulls her hand out and gives the different colored stones a gentle push. With the rumble of weight shifting, the stones slide smoothly back into the wall.
So that's how he fooled me. I had no idea this was here the last time I came.
You've been here before?
Kouji wants answers, but Ryouko ignores him and peers into the opening. In the beam of her floodlight, Kouji can see a concrete tunnel leading into the mountain.
I'm going on ahead, Tono-kun. You'd better stay here.
Her warning is simple and utterly devoid of warmth. Considering his options, Kouji looks from the tunnel to the rope and back again. He's practically sweating now, thanks to the nearly 200 proof vodka he just drank. But although feeling has returned to his fingers, he still doesn't have the strength to climb the rope. That said, the mere thought of being left alone again in the well makes him shiver.
I'll go too. Please take me with you.
Have it your way.
Ryouko steps into the tunnel without looking back, and Kouji doesn't hesitate to follow her.
You were pretty different the last time we met.
Kouji says sarcastically, following Ryouko as she moves cautiously down the tunnel with her light leading the way.
This isn't the hospital and you aren't my patient. This service doesn't come with a smile.
So, this is who you really are.
I wonder, does it matter?
Ryouko suddenly stops and stares at the floor. When Kouji looks over her shoulder, he sees a dust-covered rope lying coiled in the middle of the path.
What is it?
Something left behind by the last guy who came down that well.
Ryouko picks up the rope, examines it, and hands it to Kouji.
It's about twice as long as my rope. It has a knot in it and both ends have been severed. They were connected before, making it a circle.
Huh?
You loop one end of the circle around something topside, then use the rest to climb down into the well. When you're at the bottom, you cut the circle open and pull the whole rope in with you, leaving behind no trace of your descent.
Ryouko shines her light down the tunnel, revealing that it ends in a closed wooden door about 10 meters ahead.
That's how he avoided detection after hiding here. He really got me good.
Doctor, you said you've been here before.
Yeah, you and Sakisaka-kun aren't the only ones.
Ryouko says dryly.
I checked out Ougai's cabin a while back.
As Ryouko speaks, she opens her coat and pulls out something that she had hanging underneath it.
If there aren't any other exits, then he's still behind that door.
At first, Kouji thinks she is holding a steel pipe. Amazed that she would be carrying a weapon, Kouji looks closer, and is appalled when he realizes what it really is. It's a gun, and not one of those sleek handguns that he's seen in the movies, but a double-barreled shotgun. The stock in most of the barrels has been sawed off for easier concealment, making it appear even more terrifyingly brutal.
What is that?
A 12-gauge shotgun?
Ryouko replies blandly, as though naming a brand of cigarettes.
I don't have a permit for it, and cutting it down like this is also illegal. Any other questions?
What are you planning on doing with that?
Ryouko looks over her shoulder and shows Kouji her most chilling smile yet.
When I first learned what Ougai was doing, I was a model citizen. I'd never even gotten a ticket.
The woman whom Kouji had thought was just a normal doctor waves her sawed-off shotgun menacingly as she continues. Her tone sharp, yet self-deprecating.
If I'd had this back then, I probably would have been able to kill Ougai then and there. If I had, you kids might not have been dragged into this disaster. I feel bad about that, really.
Kouji listens in silence, helpless to do anything but watch as understanding moves farther and farther out of his grasp.
In other words, everything I do from now on is to clean up this mess that you and your friends have stepped into. Remember that, and don't ask any unnecessary questions. Got it?
Kouji's only choice is to nod weakly in response. With the light in her left hand and shotgun in her right, Ryouko walks up to the door and takes a deep breath. Then she kicks the door open, putting her full weight behind the blow. With a disappointingly feeble sound, the door breaks off on its hinges and falls into the room. In the beam of Ryouko's light, dust billows into the air like white smoke. The room is large, probably at least 35 square meters in size. Kouji's first impression is of an operating theater that was turned into a storage room. The tiled floor is set with drainage gates, and there's no mistaking the movable operating table sitting in the middle of the room. One of the walls is covered with cabinets containing enamelware and drugs, while against the opposite wall stand a writing desk and bookshelves. Even Kouji can recognize that much. The mysterious objects cluttering the tables and shelves, however, are beyond his comprehension. Mirrors delicately engraved with complex patterns, grotesque statues and masks that must have been left behind by a race of savages, tapestries woven in nauseating arrays of color, a crystal ball the size of an infant's head, and they're probably all antiques. But there's one thing that they definitely have in common. Every one of them is so loathsome and foul that Kouji feels sick even just looking at it. It's as though they were designed for the sole sinister purpose of immortalizing their creator's hatred of the world. Rare-looking books of the sort that were in Ougai's Tokyo home are piled here and there, and on one of the shelves are stacked some scrolls that look to be made of some sort of sheepskin or papyrus. Whatever it is, it's not paper. Finally, there are indecipherable chalk patterns and symbols, filling every available space on the walls. Even the two sliding blackboards are completely covered in strange, unreadable scribblings. Just looking at them is making Kouji dizzy.
Don't look!
Ryouko snaps at him.
Listen, don't move, and whatever you do, don't touch anything. Even if something draws your attention, don't look at it. If you see something that feels wrong, stare at your shoes right away. Got it?
Yeah.
Ryouko switches from the floodlight to the fluorescent lamp, then sets the lamp on a nearby table where it can illuminate the whole room. She then holsters her shotgun, only to pull out an even more confusing set of tools. A digital camera and a can of spray paint. She gives the spray can in her left hand a good shake, switches the camera in her right hand on, and steps into the room while looking at the camera's side-mounted screen. After methodically recording the symbols on the walls and blackboards, she immediately covers them in layers of black spray paint.
Doctor?
Lesson 1. Never look at strange designs or read anything written in unusual languages like Latin. Use a camera to record them for later examination, then use paint or something to destroy the real thing.
Now that she mentions it, Kouji realizes that she's only looking at the screen of her camera, and even then in only short glimpses, and never directly at any of the drawings. He understands what she's saying, but it still doesn't make any sense.
Why do you have to?
Now that you've come this far, you'd better shut up and listen for your own good. Things like crystal balls and mirrors are dangerous. Anything can happen if you break them, so it's best to cover them with a cloth or paint over them for the time being.
Kouji begins to fear that this doctor might be even crazier than Fuminori. Despite the burst of energy he received from the vodka, Kouji is still exhausted from having spent the night at the bottom of the well. The fear is beginning to affect his body, making him dizzy and nauseous. Soon, the walls are covered in black paint and the stale air is thick with the smell of turpentine.
That should do it for now.
Ryouko says with relief, then tosses the empty can aside and puts away her video camera.
What happened to Ougai?
Kouji asks, supporting himself against a nearby table.
Oh, he was over there.
Without stopping her examination of the papers on the writing table, Ryouko nonchalantly points to the Chinese-style screen standing in one corner of the room. He was there. Her clinical choice of tense makes the truth clearer than any words can. The urge to see for himself is irresistible. Kouji staggers across the room to the screen, taking the utmost care not to look at the scaly, octopus thing that's painted on it. Behind the screen is a large easy chair. Although he's never met the man before, Kouji is fairly sure that the person sitting on it is Ougai Masahiko. Ogai's corpse must have shrunk significantly while drying in the sealed, undiscovered chamber. The skeleton is barely the size of a child's, with only the business suit hanging from the bones offering any hint of Ogai's former stature. His empty eye sockets and wide-open jaw are filled with darkness. The same darkness that surrounded Kouji at the bottom of the well. Compared to those gaping voids, the tiny hole in Ogai's right temple is almost immune. The small revolver he must have used to kill himself is still clenched in his dangling right hand. Next to Ryouko's shotgun, it would probably look like a child's toy. Ryouko must have noticed Ogai's corpse when she was spraying paint on the walls. Having gotten beyond surprise by now, Kouji is instead impressed by Ryouko's ability to keep working next to a corpse without batting an eyelash. He wonders why he keeps meeting people who are totally crazy. If it weren't for her, Kouji reminds himself with a bitter smirk, he would have ended up joining this mummified corpse here, and no one would have ever found him. Kouji's vision suddenly dims. He's pushed himself too hard, and the spiritist vodka can't help him anymore. He collapses to the floor, unable to hang on to his slipping consciousness, and the last thing he sees are Ougai Masahiko's gaping eye sockets staring at him. When he awakens, Kouji finds himself lying on something dry and soft. A bed is a bed, he thinks to himself, even one that smells of mold and dust. Especially having slept in cold mud all night. There are no lights hanging from the ceiling, but the soft, warm light of a lamp fills the room, a room devoid of furnishings. Kouji realizes that he's in Ogai's cabin, in the ground floor bedroom that he'd searched before getting pushed into the well.
You're awake?
When Kouji turns his head to face the voice, he sees Ryouko sitting on a chair against the wall, expressionlessly studying the pile of documents on the table in front of her. She must have brought them up from Ogai's underground lab. As she examines the papers by the light of the lamp, she occasionally takes bites of the sandwich she has in her free hand.
If you feel up to eating, there's food there.
Without looking up from the files, she gestures towards the convenience store bag sitting on the nightstand.
How did I get here?
Kouji can't imagine that a woman, even one like Ryouko, could have climbed out of the well with him on her back.
There's a sealed door behind one of the bookshelves down there.
Ryouko mutters, as though talking to herself. Taking care not to let her explanation interfere with her reading or eating, she continues.
It was a pain to break open, but it led to the boiler room underneath the cabin. The other side had been hidden with a thin layer of mortar. He probably sealed it after bringing all his equipment into the secret lab, then used the well to get in and out. Pretty thorough.
Was there really something in there that he needed to hide so badly?
There used to be. This is the last of it.
Having finished her sandwich, Ryouko picks up some unsorted papers with her free hand and waves them in the air.
Not all scholars want to get on stage at a symposium and show off their research to the world, you know. There are also nutcases who get their kicks by learning secrets no one else knows, and by being buried with those secrets in hidden tombs that no one will ever find.
Kouji still hasn't the slightest idea what Ogai's secret might have been. From what Ryouko said in the tunnel, however, he can guess that whatever it is has done something to Fuminori.
Fuminori? What happened to her?
Kouji asks desperately, no longer caring who he gets answers from.
What does Fuminori have to do with that dead body down there? Just what is it that you're after?
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Ryouko replies coldly, as though Kouji's concerns are none of hers.
Sakisaka-kun told me that he'd been asked to find Ougai by one of Ogai's relatives.
Yes, he told me the same thing.
Oh? Well, at least that's consistent.
Ryouko pulls several sheets of loose-leaf paper from a different file.
The truth is that Ougai had no relatives. I thought that Sakisaka-kun was simply lying. However, there was another possibility I should have considered. He might have been tricked by someone claiming to be Ogai's family.
Ryouko pauses, then looks sidelong at Kouji.
Does the name Saya ring a bell?
Saya? No, who is that?
Who or what is the question. but the more I read, the less I understand.
She sighs bitterly, then returns her attention to the papers in her hand.
All I can say for sure is that it appears to have been the focus of Ougai's research. If Sakisaka-kun has become deeply involved with whatever Saya is, then he's already past the point of no return.
The icy certainty in Ryuko's voice sends a chill down Kouji's spine.
If so, what will you do with him?
He has to ask, even though he already knows the answer.
It's like I said.
Ryuko replies, smirking at the tension in Kouji's voice.
I have no idea how many times I've wished I had a gun with me 1 year ago. I won't make the same mistake twice.
If I go to the police, everything will be over!
Ryuko doesn't respond, as though she didn't even hear what Kouji just said.
Fuminori tried to kill me.
Kouji continues persistently.
If I press charges, he'll be arrested and...
Ryuko cuts him off harshly.
You have witnesses? Proof? What motive did Sakisaka-kun have to kill you? You know, Tono-kun, you're completely misunderstanding what police do. Their job isn't to fight for justice, nor even to keep the people safe.
What are you saying?
Finding reasonable explanations for unreasonable events. That's what police are for. They will always choose to believe the simplest, most logical explanation. It's just like how water always flows downhill. They aren't interested in the truth. They don't know or care that the truth is often stranger than fiction.
Surely they're not all like that! I won't know until I try.
Exactly.
Ryuko states as she pulls another sandwich out of the bag.
That's the problem.
She hasn't spared Kouji a second glance since looking at him earlier. Even while talking, her attention is always focused on the papers in front of her.
Let's say you accuse your friend of going crazy and pushing you into a well. In addition to your statement, the police will consider 2 alternative versions of the truth. Maybe you're making it all up to frame your friend. Or, even simpler, the shock of having fallen into a well by accident has you doubting your friend. These 3 possibilities will race to see which comes out with the most convincing evidence. No one knows which will be the winner. Are you willing to bet everything you have on your truth?
Kouji has no response. Can he really logically explain the events that led Fuminori to do what he did? How can he convince everyone else when he doesn't even understand it himself?
And here's the biggest problem.
Ryuko says calmly, cutting into Kouji's thoughts.
While you're raising hell with the police, we'll lose our chance to corner Sakisaka Fuminori. If he sees trouble coming, he'll go into hiding to avoid getting caught. And then we'll be back to square one.
She pauses to take a bite of her sandwich before continuing.
Just like how I let Ougai get away.
A heavy silence falls upon them, with only the soft rustle of pages turning in Ryoko's hands marking the passage of time.
Please, tell me, Doctor.
Kouji says, his hushed voice breaking through the quiet.
What is so unforgivable that you're willing to take justice into your own hands? Just what did Ougai do in that room down there?
Once again, Ryuko coldly ignores Kouji's question. This time, however, Kouji doesn't back down. He keeps staring at her relentlessly as she continues to silently immerse herself in the documents. After some time, Ryuko rearranges the papers in her hands and sets them aside, as though having come to some conclusion. She then finally turns her whole body towards Kouji.
Listen, Tono-kun.
Now that she's finally facing him, Ryuko affixes Kouji with a firm stare that belies the calmness of her voice.
You should back out of this now. Go relax at an onsen somewhere in Nasu or Nikko, and don't return to Tokyo until you're ready to forget all of this.
Forget?
After disbelievingly repeating Ryoko's command, Kouji feels quiet yet irrepressible anger rising within him.
Omi was my girlfriend, and Fuminori was my best friend. You're telling me to forget about them?
Forget about them.
Ryuko replies, coolly rebuffing Koji's anger.
This isn't a suggestion. It's a warning. Whatever their relationship to you might have been, that's all over now. You'll never see them again. I guarantee it.
Then what about Tsukuba?
Kouji practically shouts.
What'll happen to her? She was begging me for help on the phone! Something terrible was happening to her somewhere!
And how many hours ago was that?
Ah!
Do you know how much time has passed since I saved you? How much longer do you think you would have lasted down there if I hadn't?
She shakes her head, then coolly says,
It's too late. She's already dead. You shouldn't expect everyone to be as lucky as you.
You...
Kouji growls, unable to suppress his anger.
If you found me dead in that well, you wouldn't have thought anything of it, would you?
I was prepared for that, of course.
Ryouko says with a shrug, unfazed by Koji's ire.
I hardly expected to find you alive.
Once again, Kouji has been made painfully aware of the futility of arguing with this woman. No matter how hard he tries, he'll never be able to make her feel shame or reform her ways. It's meaningless to debate with someone whose morals are fundamentally different. Kouji gets out of bed and stands on his shaky legs.
How long have I been asleep?
About half a day. I envy your ability to recover from exhaustion so quickly. It's the privilege of the young, so enjoy it while it lasts.
Kouji looks at his watch and sees that it's 4 a.m., which means that it was already early evening when Ryouko rescued him. He can't believe that he survived sitting in that well for almost 2 days. Now that the gaps in his memory have been filled in, and his sense of time has returned, he realizes that it's already Sunday morning. Ryoko's right. A lot of time has passed since he spoke to Yo on Saturday. Kouji grabs a sports drink and 2 jellied nutritional snacks from the pack of food that Ryouko bought, then heads for the door. He's still unsteady on his feet, but he can manage through force of will.
Just to make sure, mind telling me where you're going?
Tokyo.
Kouji replies brusquely, his tone no less hard than Ryoko's.
Tsukuba might still be alive. I'm going to save her.
You just don't listen, do you?
I could say the same to you.
Kouji is expecting Ryouko to watch him go with the cold, mocking smile of hers. Instead, however, she sighs heavily and rests her jaw in her hands.
Can't you wait a little longer? Somewhere in here
She thrusts her chin at the mountain of papers in front of her.
is the answer to what this thing Ougai called Saya is. I think that we should wait until I figure that out and come up with a plan to defeat it.
You would think that, since you're already convinced that Tsukuba is dead.
In truth, Kouji is extremely uneasy about going on alone. He knows, however, that even if he did have Ryoko's help, she would surely bring about the worst possible end. He mustn't depend on her.
Tono-kun,
Ryouko calls, just as Kouji opens the door and steps into the hallway.
you were almost killed once. Don't let it happen again.
She picks up something that was lying next to her pile of documents and casually tosses it to Kouji. When Kouji catches it, he feels its solid weight.
This is...
Kouji stares at the menacing shape of cold metal. It's a revolver, the one that was clenched in Ougai's skeletal fist.
It has 4 more shots. There's no safety, so you just need to pull the trigger to fire. Where and how to use it is up to you.
If Kouji were his usual cautious self, he probably wouldn't hesitate to reject the dangerous offering. The only end a gun would decisively bring is absolute ruin. He doesn't intend to go back to Tokyo to fight a losing war. However, without even knowing it, Kouji has already set foot into Ryoko's world. Choosing instinct over reason, he accepts the small but deadly weapon and stuffs it into his pocket. There is no question that Kouji intends to save Yo and bring Fuminori to answer for his sins. In the back of his mind, however, he clearly hears the footsteps of destruction approaching. When he steps out of the cabin's front door, Kouji shivers at the cold of the dawn forest. The freezing wind swooping across the front yard is like knives against his skin. He can't believe that the outside air is even colder than the mud at the bottom of the well. The cold of night must have been lessened by the stagnant air filling the cramped space. If he'd been exposed to this intense chill all night long, he would surely have frozen to death. Kouji finds 2 cars parked at the end of the road leading to the front yard. The mini car next to his Accord must be Ryoko's. When he sits behind the wheel of his car, he gets some relief from the feeling that he has taken the first step, however small, back into his world. He takes small sips of the sports drink, wetting his parched throat, then washes down some jello. His stomach rebels at the sudden influx of food after 36 hours of emptiness, but he manages to force down the urge to vomit. Kouji needs the energy. No matter how hard it is, he must regain enough stamina to overcome the challenges ahead. After forcing down the necessary amount of food, Kouji leans back in his seat and takes a short break. Now that he has begun to feel like himself again, he reaches into the back seat and pulls his spare cell phone out of the bag. He never expected that accidentally carrying 2 phones would be such a stroke of luck. As he calls up Fuminori's number and prepares to hit send, Kouji is overcome by a flood of emotions. Rage, despair, sorrow, pity. He is unable to decide what to feel towards his friend. However, there is no such time for such idle worries. Every second lost diminishes the chance of saving Omi and Yo. Kouji refuses to even consider that it might be too late. He steels himself and presses the button, then holds the phone to his ear as it rings longer and louder than ever before. Right now, Fuminori's phone must be displaying the name of the caller. Kouji wonders what Fuminori's reaction will be when he sees it. The call goes through. Kouji can clearly sense surprise, apprehension, and dark fury coming from the silence at the other end of the phone. Feeling slightly gratified, Kouji delivers the first jab.
Yo, were you expecting a call from a dead man?
What a surprise. How did you manage it?
As Kouji was about to answer, an idea suddenly flashes through his mind.
There was a secret passage in the well.
Kouji says, as a plan forms rapidly in his head.
It led to a hidden underground room.
He pauses to let that sink in. Then, with the satisfaction of having taken the initiative filling his voice, says,
I met Ougai Masahiko, you know.
Fuminori's gasp makes it clear that Kouji has seized the advantage completely. Keeping his voice fearless, he decides to further exaggerate the truth.
I know it all. Everything about Saya. You're finished, Fuminori. I got all the proof I need to blow this thing wide open. You won't even see it coming.
You bastard.
It's obvious from the sound of Fuminori's voice that rage has overwhelmed his reason. Kouji's hit-or-miss bluff appears to have worked perfectly. His victory is tainted, however, as Fuminori's extreme response to the word Saya brings a cry of pain from the traces of friendship still hiding in the depths of his soul.
If Sakisaka-kun has become deeply involved with whatever Saya is,
Ryoko's cold words play back in his head, sounding even more pitiless than before.
then he's already past the point of no return.
He mustn't allow himself to be overwhelmed by useless emotions.
Fuminori, where are Omi and Tsukuba?
Kouji suddenly switches topics, trying to keep Fuminori off balance. It all comes down to this.
Even I might be willing to show you mercy, depending on how you act, that is. If you swear not to cause any more suffering, I'll forget about what you did to me, and about what I found at that cabin. I don't want to have anything more to do with you and Saya anyway. All I want is for Omi and Yo to be safe.
Omi and Yo, huh?
Fuminori's voice trails off, but it's obvious that he's desperately trying to decide whether or not he can trust Kouji's words, and whether or not there's room for negotiation. Fuminori has been called out, and now it's time for him to show his hand.
I truly don't know anything about Umi. She never came to my house. Yo, however...
Fuminori pauses, then gives a knowing chuckle that sends chills up Kouji's spine.
Well, I wonder if she'll really want to leave.
She's with you, isn't she?
Kouji is relieved to learn Yo's location and that she is, at least, alive. At the same time, however, it is now clear that Fuminori had something to do with the suffering that Kouji had heard Yo going through over the phone. Had Yo already fallen into Fuminori's trap back then? What has happened to her? How is she being treated?
She's finally had her deepest desire granted, you know.
Fuminori says with venomous sarcasm.
She's my property now. It looks like you and Omi got what you wanted after all.
Kouji feels despair settling over his soul. How much lower will this man go? Kouji wonders. Must Fuminori seek out and destroy every memory of the friendship that they'd once shared?
Let Tsukuba go. When I'm sure she's safe, I'll destroy everything I have on you and Saya.
How can I trust you? First I want you to...
I'm not giving you a choice here, Fuminori.
Kouji instinctively realizes that it's dangerous to push his bluff any further.
I'll call you again later. You have until then to make up your mind.
Let's Step Project.